What happens when a broken past meets an unbroken will? An empire of love is built. Two lives, born miles apart, yet bound by destiny. Krishna, the youngest of many brothers and a sister in a once stable family that slid into poverty. Elsie, the youngest of 7, 1 brother and 5 sisters, growing up in a home so poor that even dignity was a luxury. Krishna grew up in a large family, but as the youngest, he often felt left on his own. His mother had too many responsibilities with the older children and the household to give him much attention. After his birth, the intense famine of the 1970s and poverty made things worse. Food was scarce, and some mornings he had to go to school without eating, even as a first standard kid. He sat through classes hungry, trying to concentrate while his stomach was empty. Elsie's childhood carried a different pain. At school, torn clothes and unkempt hair drew the scorn of teachers. She was made to stand outside the classroom, not because she lacked discipline, but because she lacked neatness, which many didn't understand was a privilege. While other children learned, she stood alone, humiliated. After lessons ended, she swept the classroom floor, waiting until every child had gone so she could collect thrown-away broken pencils. Tiny stubs became her treasure, her tools for learning. She had to make use of already used leftover cooking oil to smooth her hair, desperate to appear decent enough to be let back into the classroom. She found her first escape in a Christian sister's school, where the nuns gave her what poverty never allowed her to have: empathy, dignity, and belonging. She has always looked up to them and their nature of willingness to help someone in need without expecting anything in them. As Krishna entered his teenage years, sorrow struck harder. In the 10th standard, his father collapsed with a heart attack and lost his memory. The boy stood helpless and forced to endure the agony of being asked by his own father, "What is your name?" By the 12th standard, which is around 16 years old, his father was gone forever. Dreams of higher studies fell apart. Poverty forced him to choose a college course that he could afford, but not the one he desired. Working part-time tutoring mathematics to young kids and as a chemistry lab assistant to his professor, he somehow managed the fees for his college. Later, Krishna's eldest brother stepped up to cover college fees when he could. But the food, travel, and daily living expenses stayed on Krishna's shoulders. Other siblings had families and responsibilities of their own. There was no room left for him to even consider asking for their help. Luckily, the family house gave some relief. Renting a part of it brought in a little money. With all the despair, the feeling of abandonment, the unfair nature of life, Krishna started questioning everything, and before all that helplessness turned into hatred, he found a group of friends who guided him into a path of healing through meditation and a spiritual journey where he could internalize all his questions and seek meaning in silence. He believed that by calming the storm within, he could guide others who were lost in theirs. For the first time in his life, he found something that he could rely on, and he had decided to help others around him while he continues to be on this path and live life as a bachelor. While he was on a silent divine path, on the other end, Elsie moved in a different direction with her own approach. She did not retreat into silence. She pushed outward into the noise of the streets. She spoke out against practices that kept the poor trapped in shame, and she aligned herself with community organizations that worked on women's rights and social reforms. She marched in protests, held placards for social justice. One fine day, through a tuition student's reference, Krishna met Elsie as a tenant. What began as a tenant-landlord relationship slowly became a strong friendship. Evenings on the veranda, with coffee cups in hand, turned into hours of conversation and clashes of belief. That is when the two worlds started colliding into each other. Seemingly opposite ideologies slowly shaped into a new stable form out of mutual admiration, which of course they didn't know was going to be the first chapter of a greater story. Seeking a stable role in service, Krishna attended an interview at Goodwill Children's Home in Thondikudi. He was selected as a caretaker and teacher. From 1995 to 2001, he ran the Industrial Training Institute course, mentoring teenage boys and also conducting counseling sessions with juvenile offenders. He taught values, practical skills, and discipline to boys others had written off. It was at Goodwill that Krishna met David Kirk, a physics teacher from the UK and a sponsor installing solar panels. Krishna sent his boys to learn from him, and David noticed the discipline and integrity in the young teacher. A friendship with mutual respect bloomed, unannounced. At this time, Krishna received a letter from Elsie, a confession of love. For Krishna, it was a storm. He had vowed a life of bachelorhood, focused on service. He worried about their different castes and religions, and the conflicts they might bring. For Elsie, it was a risk, a leap of faith, placing her heart in his hands. Krishna wrestled for days, retreating into silence, into thought, into prayer. Finally, he said yes. In 1999, Krishna and Elsie were married at Goodwill itself, not in the presence of rich relatives, but surrounded by children. A simple wedding, but a sacred vow, to turn sorrow into service. After their marriage in 1999 at Goodwill Children's Home, they both worked at Goodwill. Krishna guided older boys through activities like meditation and theater arts, along with academic studies. Elsie worked closely with the younger children, bringing warmth and empathy into every lesson. When they were students themselves, both were active in school and college dramas. Soon, their son, Danish, was born. Goodwill's children became his protectors and playmates, holding him as their own brother. But the cold air of the hill station often made him fall sick. With heavy hearts, Krishna and Elsie left Goodwill. Life outside was harder. Krishna worked as an engineer in a cotton mill, Elsie in another trust institution. Salaries were small, but the dream remained. David Kirk gave Krishna a motor installation project with 20,000 rupees. Krishna completed it and used the remainder to begin the legal registration of a trust. Elsie, through her contacts, secured land from a friend to start their own institution. Through her current workplace, Elsie met Vairamani, a disabled girl close to secondary school age, and she wanted Krishna to meet Vairamani. The couple wanted to give her notebooks, but their life took a quick turn when the girl looked at them and said, "I want to study. Take me with you." It struck deep. That help was not just giving a notebook, it was taking responsibility for the girl's life. On the same day, they also met Ranjith, a little boy who had to witness his mother setting herself on fire, and his little sister trying to save her, but died, along with her mother. Ranjith hesitated to leave his granny alone. Krishna and Elsie solved it by taking both the boy and the grandmother to give them a better life. And that is how Awake Mercy Home was started, without giving much thought into their own family, financial stability, or backup, but only with sheer will and hope.